Snow fell thick. Wind screamed through shattered windows of the dead city. The SEAL convoy stopped radio, whispered colder than ice. Convoys surrounded. Headlights died. Darkness swallowed everything. Then from above, a spark flared, not a flare, but the held breath of a marksman. From the snow-covered void, she appeared. The M4 barked dry and sharp, each round cutting through the night. Enemies dropped before understanding what was happening. The winter night had just found its whisper. The city had been empty for 3 years. Nobody remembered its name anymore. What remained were concrete skeletons and ice-crusted steel, monuments to something that used to breathe. Now only wind moved through its streets, carrying snow like ash. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Hayes pressed his gloved hand against the cold window of the lead Humvee. The convoy, 4 vehicles, 18 souls, moved in tight formation through streets that should have been silent. Should have been. Radio check, Hayes said into his headset. 2. Solid. 3. Green. 4. Copy. The responses came crisp. Professional, but Hayes heard something underneath. Unease, the kind that lived in the spine before the brain caught up. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb sat beside him, M4 carbine, resting across his lap. His eyes tracked rooftops, windows, doorways, always moving. "Sir, this doesn't feel right." "Define right," Hayes said. "Movement patterns. We should be seeing wildlife, birds, something." Webb's jaw tightened. "This is too quiet." Hayes knew what he meant. Nature had rules. Even in winter, even in abandoned places, life found cracks to grow through. But here, nothing. Just white silence and the crunch of tires on frozen concrete. The convoy slowed, approaching an intersection. Buildings leaned inward like judges examining a criminal. Ice hung from upper floors in jagged curtains. The street narrowed. "Navigation?" Hayes asked. Petty Officer Daniels checked the GPS. "This is the route, sir. Only path wide enough for the vehicles." Something moved in Hayes's peripheral vision. A shadow where shadows shouldn't shift. He snapped his head, left nothing but a broken storefront, its interior black as a throat. "Contact front," Webb suddenly barked. Hayes saw it. A glint. Metal catching what little light existed. 300 meters. Second floor window. "All vehicles," Hayes began. The radio screeched. Not static. Jamming. Pure interference that drove ice picks through eardrums. "Switch to alternate frequency." Hayes ripped his headset off. Blood dripped from his ear. Not good. Not good at all. The street behind them erupted. Not gunfire, an explosion. Controlled. Precise. The blast sent a cascade of rubble across their exit path, sealing them in. We're boxed. Webb already had his rifle up, scanning for targets. Hayes grabbed the backup radio. "All units, defensive positions, we're in the kill zone." The city had been waiting. Patient as winter itself. Gunfire came from everywhere and nowhere. Muzzle flashes sparked from windows, doorways, shadows between shadows. The first rounds sparked off armor. Testing. Hayes kicked open his door. "Out! Get behind the vehicles." SEALs poured out in controlled chaos. Each man knew his sector, his responsibility. They formed a perimeter around the Humvees, using the vehicles as cover. But cover was temporary. The enemy had elevation, time, planning. Corpsman Bradley Fisher dragged their comm specialist behind the third vehicle. "Stay down, stay down." A round punched through the Humvee's window, exactly where Hayes's head had been seconds before. Glass exploded inward. Professional shot. These weren't militia. These were trained. "Count," Hayes shouted. 12 visible hostiles. Webb returned fire in controlled bursts. More concealed, guaranteed. The snowfall intensified. That was bad. It cut visibility both ways, but the enemy already knew the terrain. They'd chosen this ground, prepared it. The SEALs were walking into a set table. Another explosion, this one ahead. The forward route collapsed into debris. Now they were truly trapped, a box within a box. Hayes tried the backup radio again. "Whiskey 7 actual to base. We are engaged. Coordinates." Static, dead air, then something else. A voice, soft, barely there, not from his team's channel. "Surrounded." Hayes froze. "Say again?" Nothing. just the howl of wind and the crack of rifles. But he'd heard it. Female, American accent, and something about the tone, not fear, assessment. Did anyone else hear that? Hayes asked. Negative responses all around. Maybe he'd imagined it. Blood loss from burst eardrums could cause responses. The voice again, clearer. Convoy surrounded. Sit tight. This time, Webb heard it too. Who the hell? Not ours, Hayes said. Check your sector. Petty Officer Ramos leaned around the Humvee to return fire. A round caught him in the shoulder, spinning him back. Fisher was there instantly, dragging him to cover, applying pressure. Man down, Fisher called. Shoulder wound, through and through. The enemy was finding their range. The noose was tightening. In maybe 5 minutes, this defensive position would become a grave. Hayes made calculations. Ammo, cover, casualties. The math didn't work. They needed air support, reinforcements, a miracle. None were coming. Sir, Webb pointed upward. Rooftop, 11 o'clock. Hayes swung his rifle up. A shape moved across a roofed line 4 buildings over, visible for just a heartbeat. Then, gone. But it had been moving away from the enemy positions, toward higher ground. Her name didn't matter. Names were for people who existed in daylight, who had faces friends could remember. She had neither. What she had was a position, 6 stories up, in what used to be an office building. The walls had collapsed on the south side, giving her a cathedral of space. Snow drifted through the exposed beams. Cold bit through her layered clothing, but cold was just information. It told her how the air moved, how ballistics would behave. She'd watched the convoy enter the city 3 minutes ago, watched the enemy close the trap, professional work, coordinated. They'd been planning this for weeks. She'd been watching longer. Her M4 rested on a makeshift bench rubble and a rotted door. Not standard issue, modified, extended barrel, match-grade trigger. The scope was older than she was, but it held 0 better than anything modern. Some things improved with age. Glass, whiskey, precision instruments. Through the scope, she counted hostiles. 16, visible. Call it 25 total. The SEALs below were good. Their defensive formation was textbook, but textbooks assumed support, extraction, hope. They had none of those things. She shifted her eye from the scope, inhaled. The air tasted like iron and old concrete. She read the wind through how snow moved between buildings, swirling, chaotic. She'd need to time shots between gusts. Her spotter was dead. Had been for 2 years. Landmine outside Kandahar. Since then, she worked alone. It was cleaner that way. No one to mourn, no one to hesitate for. She pressed the radio transmit. Convoys surrounded. Sit tight. No acknowledgement came. They didn't know who she was. Didn't need to. They just needed to survive the next 10 minutes. She chambered around. The sound was absorbed by snow and wind. Down below, muzzle flashes painted the street in orange strobe lights. The enemy was getting confident, pressing closer. Mistake. Her breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to the scope circle. First target, enemy commander. She could tell by how the others oriented toward him, how he moved with authority. He stood in a 3rd-floor window, protected by concrete pillars. Difficult shot. The angle required threading the needle between cover points. Wind would push the round left. She'd need to compensate. She calculated, adjusted. The crosshairs settled on a point in space where flesh would be in 1.2 seconds. I'm going in, she whispered to no one. The first round left the barrel at 2,900 feet per second. It crossed 400 meters in just over half a second. The wind caught it, pushed it 3 inches left exactly as she'd predicted. The bullet entered the enemy commander's temple and exited through the opposite side, taking brain matter and bone with it. He dropped without a sound. His men didn't notice immediately. They were focused on the SEALs, on advancing positions, on victory they could taste. She was already acquiring the second target, a machine gunner, setting up on a 2nd-floor balcony. He'd just finished mounting the weapon to a tripod. In 30 seconds, he'd have been pouring suppressive fire into the convoy. Game over. She led him. He was moving left to adjust the gun's angle. Her crosshairs settled on empty air. She waited for his pattern to bring him into the kill zone. Crack. The M4 spoke. The gunner's chest erupted. He fell backward, pulling the machine gun down with him. It clattered over the balcony edge, disappearing into snow below. Now the enemy noticed. Shouts echoed through the dead city. They were scanning rooftops, trying to find her muzzle flash, but she'd positioned herself behind a concrete pillar. The blast was directed away, dispersed. She moved. Never stay static, that was death. Down below, the SEALs were reacting. One of them, the lieutenant, she guessed from his bearing, was shouting orders. They'd realized someone was providing overwatch. Their fire became more coordinated, more aggressive. Good. Use the opening. She'd crossed to the building's east side. Different angle, new targets. A sniper was setting up on a rooftop across from the convoy. He had a good position, would have been lethal in another minute. Not today. She fired before he'd finished prone positioning. The round took him in the shoulder, spinning him. He rolled off the roof, disappearing between buildings. Probably dead from the fall. If not, out of the fight. 4 down, 21 to go. Maybe. The enemy was adapting. They'd started using smoke grenades. White smoke billowed into white snow. Visual chaos. It cut both ways. The SEALs couldn't see targets clearly, but neither could she. She switched to thermal imaging monocular. The world became shades of red and blue. Heat signatures glowed through the smoke like candles in fog. There, 3 hostiles advancing on the convoy's east flank. They thought the smoke gave them cover. It gave them coffins. She fired 3 times in 6 seconds. Each round found flesh. The heat signatures dropped, their glow fading as blood cooled in snow. The SEALs were pushing back now. She could hear their coordinated volleys. They'd gone from defensive to aggressive. The enemy's careful plan was unraveling. But plans had backup plans. The enemy wasn't stupid. They'd realized they had a sniper problem, and they'd brought their own solution. She saw him through her scope, another marksman, moving between buildings with professional economy of motion. He had a rifle similar to hers, maybe better, and he was hunting her. The chess match had begun. She tracked his movement pattern. He was good, used cover well, never exposed himself for more than a second, but everyone had tells. His was consistency. He moved in a rhythm: observe, advance, observe, advance. Patterns killed. She repositioned to the building's northwest corner. Rubble crunched under her boots. She froze. Sound carried differently in snow, especially to trained ears. Through the scope, she watched the enemy sniper. He'd stopped moving, listening. They'd heard each other. She controlled her breathing, made herself stone. The wind howled, covering smaller sounds. After 30 seconds, he moved again. He dismissed the noise as structural settling. Buildings in cities like this were always dying, always groaning. Wrong call. She tracked him through 3 positions. Building a pattern. Predicting. He was trying to flank her last known location. Smart. But he was working with old information. He appeared in a window, just his silhouette, half a second exposure as he scanned with his own scope. She fired. The round shattered the window frame 6 inches from his head, deliberately missed. She wanted him rattled, not dead, yet. He dove back into darkness. Now he knew she'd seen him. The psychological game had shifted. Below, the battle continued. The SEALs had retaken initiative. They'd established 2 firebase positions, covering each other's advances. They were working to create an exit corridor. She needed to give them time. The enemy sniper appeared again. Different window, different building. He'd moved fast, and he'd learned. This time he didn't expose his full silhouette, just enough scope to scan. They were at an impasse. Neither could get a clean shot without exposing themselves. The difference was time. He could wait, she couldn't. The SEALs needed her. So she changed the rules. She grabbed a loose chunk of concrete, threw it across the room. It crashed against the opposite wall, loud, distinctive. Through her scope, she watched the enemy sniper's position. He'd heard it. His barrel swung toward the sound. That was the opening. His rifle barrel extended past cover by 3 inches. His hand was visible on the forward grip. She could see the slight tremor, not fear, just humanity. Blood flow, muscle fatigue. She aimed for where his shoulder would be, 6 inches behind that hand. Fired. The round punched through 2 layers of wall before finding him. She heard his scream distant, swallowed by wind. His rifle clattered out of view. Not dead, but definitely out of the fight. The blizzard intensified. Visibility collapsed to 50 meters. That was a gift. The enemy's coordination was breaking down. Without their commander, without their support weapons, they were fragmenting. The SEALs were breaking out. The fight had moved deeper into the urban core. Buildings pressed closer together here. Streets became alleys, became corridors of ice and shadow. She descended from her perch. Rooftop work was done. Now it was close quarters, different rules, different breathing. Her M4 hung on its sling. She'd drawn her sidearm, a 1911, old, reliable. In tight spaces, handguns won. Faster, more maneuverable, and at 10 feet, accuracy was guaranteed. She moved through a ground-floor shopping arcade. Store signs hung crooked, their messages faded to ghosts. Ice covered the floor in sheets. Her boots found purchase on the rough concrete beneath. Voices ahead, the enemy regrouping. She counted 4 distinct speakers. They were panicked now. Their ambush had become a nightmare. Half their force was dead or wounded. The other half was questioning why they'd taken this contract. She pressed against a pillar. Listened. Soldiers always talked too much when fear arrived. They gave away positions, numbers, intentions. Can't find Dmitri. That sniper is still out there. We need to extract. The Americans are pushing through the East Corridor. Good. The SEALs were close. She could work with that. She pulled a flashbang from her vest. Old school, but effective. She cooked it for 2 seconds, then rolled it into the room where the voices gathered. Grenade. She'd already moved. The blast came light and sound compressing into a single weapon. She entered through a different doorway, low and fast. 4 men. Disoriented. Hands over ears. Eyes squeezed shut. She put 2 rounds in each center mass. Professional. No hesitation. They dropped in sequence, like dominoes. A memory flashed. Unwanted. Her instructor's voice. Hesitation is choosing to die slowly. She'd stopped hesitating years ago. Outside, the blizzard had become a whiteout. She'd lost visual on the convoy's exact position, but she could hear them coordinated fire discipline, moving in bounds, covering and advancing. They were heading toward the central plaza. That was bad. Open space. Kill zone if the enemy had reinforcements. She keyed her radio. Turn north at the fountain. Avoid the plaza. No response. They still didn't trust the ghost voice. She moved faster. Through a collapsed department store, its mannequins lying like casualties. Through a parking garage where cars sat frozen in time, their tires flat, their windows opaque with frost. The past lived here. She could feel it. This city had been someone's home, someone's workplace, someone's first kiss, last goodbye, ordinary Tuesday. Now it was just terrain, angles, fields of fire. The living had abandoned it. The dead didn't care. She emerged on the fountain's north side. The SEALs were 50 meters south, still approaching the plaza. The enemy had set up a crossfire buildings on 3 sides, machine gun positions ready. It was another trap, and the SEALs were walking into it. She had maybe 30 seconds before the SEALs entered the kill zone. Not enough time to warn them effectively. They'd learned to trust her fire support, but verbal warnings? Still suspicious. So she'd speak in the language they understood. Precision violence. The enemy commander's replacement had positioned himself in the plaza's clock tower. Smart. Elevation. Cover. Command view. He was directing his forces through hand signals, maintaining radio silence to prevent interception. That discipline would kill him. She'd climbed to a 3rd-floor office space. Wind screamed through broken windows, strong enough to push her sideways. The snow was horizontal now, each flake a tiny blade. Her spotter scope was useless. The thermal imaging couldn't penetrate this density of precipitation. She'd have to shoot old school, reading the wind through feel, calculating drop by instinct, trusting experience more than technology. The distance was extreme, 400 meters, upward angle of 30 degrees, wind gusting at 40 miles per hour, direction variable, target partially concealed behind stone pillars. Impossible shot. She'd made worse. She settled into position. Her body became architecture, bones as supports, muscles as cables. The M4's stock pressed against her shoulder, familiar as an old friend's hand. Through the scope, She could barely see the tower. The target was a shadow within a shadow. She'd get one shot, maybe. Then he'd disappear, and the SEALs would walk into a meat grinder. She controlled her breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The heart rate slowed. The world narrowed. Sounds faded, no wind, no gunfire, no screaming. Just the scope's circle and her breath. The enemy commander shifted, just slightly, leaning forward to observe the approaching Americans. His silhouette became clearer, a shape approximating human. She read the wind. Not through instruments, through her skin. How it pushed against her jacket, how it made the building groan, how snow spiraled between structures. 3 seconds between gusts. That was her window. She waited, patient as winter. The wind howled, died, howled, died. Her finger moved, not pulled, squeezed, smooth, inevitable as sunrise. The M4 roared. Recoil drove into her shoulder. She rode it, already tracking for follow-up. The round traveled through chaos. Wind grabbed it, tried to throw it off course. She'd predicted 17 inches of drift, gave it 18. The bullet climbed through snow and air and probability. It found the gap between stone pillars, found flesh, found bone. The enemy commander went down. She couldn't see the impact through the blizzard, but she knew. The way his silhouette collapsed, the way his men suddenly froze, looking up, shouting in confusion. She'd cut the head off the snake. Now, she transmitted. Push north, now. This time, the SEALs listened. Lieutenant Commander Hayes heard the shot, distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle, cutting through the storm's roar. Then the radio, that ghost voice again. Now, push north, now. He'd learned to trust that voice. It had kept them alive for the past 20 minutes. Whoever she was, she could see what they couldn't. All units, North Corridor. Bounding overwatch, Hayes moved, and his team moved with him. Staff Sergeant Webb led the advance. He'd taken point, his M4 tracking left and right. Behind him, the others moved in pairs, one covering while the other advanced. Textbook, automatic. The enemy fire had become sporadic. Confused, their command structure was shattered. Individual fighters were making individual decisions. That meant chaos, and chaos meant opportunity. Contact left. Petty Officer Daniels fired a 3-round burst. A hostile dropped from a second-story window. Moving, Webb surged forward, clearing the corner. They'd reached the fountain. It was frozen solid, ice sculptures where water once danced. Now it was just cover, good cover. Hayes scanned the plaza ahead. Open space, too open. Every instinct screamed ambush, but their ghost guardian had said push north. He had to trust. Smoke out. Fisher threw grenades. White smoke billowed, adding to the blizzard's natural concealment. They moved through the plaza like phantoms. The enemy machine gun positions were silent, their crews dead or fled. Hayes saw bodies in the towers, precise shots, head and chest wounds, professional work. Who was she? Clear. Webb had reached the north exit. Routes open. The convoy vehicles couldn't follow, too much rubble blocked the streets. They'd have to abandon them. But vehicles could be replaced. Lives couldn't. Load essential gear. 60 seconds, Hayes ordered. His team moved with practiced efficiency. Ammunition, medical supplies, communications, equipment. They left everything else. The Humvees would stay, monuments to a fight they'd survived. Corpsman Fisher helped Ramos walk. The shoulder wound was stabilized, but he'd need proper medical attention soon. Can you move? Can I move? Try stopping me. Ramos grinned through pain. Hayes did a final count. 18 souls in, 18 souls out. Wounded, but alive. Impossible odds, yet here they stood. He keyed the radio. To our guardian angel, we're moving north on foot. Thank you doesn't cover it. Static answered. Then, keep moving. Don't stop until you're 5 clicks clear. Understood. Can we get a visual? Buy you a drink? A pause. Longer this time. Then, negative. Stay quiet. The transmission ended. Hayes looked up, trying to spot her position. But the blizzard had swallowed everything. She was gone. Maybe had never been there. Maybe was just a voice and a rifle and a will to intervene. Sir? Webb waited. Move out, Hayes said. The SEALs disappeared into the storm, leaving the dead city behind. They'd walked for 3 hours before stopping. The city was distant now, just a dark smudge on the white horizon. The team had found shelter in a partially collapsed warehouse, enough roof remaining to block the wind, enough walls to provide security. Hayes established a perimeter while Fisher treated Ramos properly. The shoulder wound was clean through and through, missing bone and major vessels. Lucky. They were all lucky. They should have died in that plaza. Should have been another classified casualty statistic, another operation gone wrong. Instead, they were alive, thanks to a ghost. Anyone get eyes on her? Hayes asked. Negative responses around the circle. No one had seen anything, just heard that voice, seen the results of her fire. SEALs don't have female snipers, Webb said, not in active combat roles. She wasn't a SEAL, Daniel said. Voice was American, but accent was neutral, like someone who's lived everywhere and nowhere. Contractor? Someone suggested. Contractors don't work solo in territory this hot, Hayes countered. Especially not for free. We didn't call for support, she just intervened. The team fell silent. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault on the world. Inside, 18 men tried to process what had happened. Think she's still back there? Ramos asked. Maybe, Hayes said. Maybe she's already 50 miles away. Maybe she was never there, and we shared a mass hallucination. The dead guys would disagree, Webb said. Those were real bullets. Hayes pulled out his map, tried to pinpoint where the sniper might have been positioned. The office building, 6 stories, west side of the plaza. Good sight lines, covered approaches. If he was planning Overwatch, he'd have chosen the same spot. He marked it on the map, drew a circle around it, noted the time, date, conditions. When they got back to base, if they got back to base, he'd file a report. Someone, somewhere, might know who she was. Or maybe she'd stay a ghost. A story told in dark bars and quiet briefing rooms. The angel in the snow. The whisper who saved 18 lives. We need to move again in 4 hours, Hayes said. Get rest. We've got a long walk to extract. The men settled in. Some slept. Others stared at walls, processing, trying to fit the day's chaos into mental boxes labeled experience. Hayes stayed awake. He was staring at the map when Webb sat down beside him. You're going to try finding her, Webb said. No, Hayes replied. I'm going to respect her wishes. She said stay quiet, so we stay quiet. But you want to know? Of course I want to know. Hayes folded the map. But some people operate outside the system for good reasons. Pushing might expose her, might compromise whatever she's doing out here. Think she's hunting? I think she's avenging, Hayes said quietly. You don't get that good alone unless you've got nothing left to lose. The blizzard howled, the warehouse groaned, and somewhere in the storm, a ghost walked, carrying a rifle and a weight no one else could see. She'd watched them leave, through her scope, following their movement until they became specks, then nothing. They'd walked well, maintained spacing, stayed alert. They'd make it to extraction, probably. Not her problem anymore. She turned back to the dead city. The enemy forces had scattered. Maybe 15 had escaped. The rest were frozen corpses now, feeding the urban legends that would grow around this place. She moved through abandoned streets, retracing paths she'd walked alone for months. This city was hers now. Not through ownership, through knowledge. She knew every roofline, every basement, every place where the walls leaned just right to funnel wind. She'd come here chasing ghosts of her own. Intelligence said her spotters' killers had used this city as a staging ground, planning, recruiting, training. She'd found them. 2 weeks ago, put them in the ground with the same precision they'd used on her partner. Justice? Revenge? The words were interchangeable at this altitude of cold. But she'd stayed. Because cities like this attracted certain kinds of people, and certain kinds of people needed certain kinds of attention. Today had been incidental. She'd heard the convoy approach, recognized American equipment sounds, watched the ambush unfold, made a choice. Simple arithmetic, 18 lives versus 25 enemies. The math worked. She climbed back to her primary nest, the 6th floor office with the collapsed wall, her home, such as it was, sleeping bag, water purification, MREs, Ammunition, the essentials of a life stripped to function. She cleaned her rifle, methodical, religious, broke it down to components, wiped each piece, reassembled. The ritual was meditation, the only piece she knew. Her radio crackled. Not the tactical channel, the old emergency frequency. Someone was transmitting. Anyone copy? This is civilian convoy. We're static, wounded, need immediate. She picked up the handset, listened. The transmission repeated. Different voices, fear in every syllable. She looked at her map. Their position was 40 kilometers east. Not her sector, not her problem. She should ignore it. She reached for the transmit button, stopped. The SEALs would file reports. Questions would be asked. Drawing more attention was dangerous. She survived by being invisible. The transmission came again. Please, if anyone can hear, we have children. She closed her eyes. Saw her spotter's face. His daughter's picture he'd carried. The one that burned in the vehicle after the mine detonated. Some debts couldn't be repaid, only passed forward. She grabbed her gear, weapons, ammunition, water. She'd sleep when she was dead. Right now, she had miles to cover. I copy your transmission, she said into the radio. Stay in your vehicles. Help is coming. Who is this? She didn't answer. Names were for people who existed in daylight. She was just the whisper in the dark, the bullet from nowhere, the shadow that saved lives and disappeared before dawn. The storm was her cover. The night was her ally. And somewhere east, people needed the kind of help only a ghost could provide. She stepped out into the blizzard. The city swallowed her in seconds, as if she'd never been there at all, as if she was just another legend told around fires in winter. But the SEALs would remember, in their reports, in their stories, in the quiet moments when they thought about the day they should have died. They'd remember the whisper. And somewhere in the snow, she'd remember why she stayed, why she fought, why she remained the guardian no one asked for but everyone needed. The wind carried her away. The city returned to silence. And the ghosts, both living and dead, continued their dance in the frozen dark. Dawn would come, eventually, but darkness always lasted longer. And in that darkness, she was home.